Welcome to another video. This one is going to be about misunderstandings in team environments and how they affect team culture and how you can mold a team culture in order to reduce misunderstandings. A team culture is something that's unavoidable for all teams. It doesn't matter if it's in Overwatch or if it's in any other game or even any other industry. A culture is the core values and beliefs and behavior of a group of individuals. And if you imagine it in Overwatch, basically the sum of each and every player and what they believe in, how they look at things, how they behave in game and outside of the game, etc., will set the team culture, and that will create the team environment. So for example, if you have three players that are used to playing tanks, and you have three players that are used to playing dive, obviously it's going to be a bit different at first, but these things, create misunderstandings, but you can solve it. And it's because a team culture isn't permanent. And it's important to know this because you can make active contributions to mold the team culture. And when it comes to Overwatch League, it's usually on the coaches to do that because they have a wider view of the team, if that makes sense. So anyways, if we imagine that we're creating a new team and we're trying to gel, it might not be natural at first, it might not feel like it's going in a flow, if that makes sense. And it's important to know that in game you have a match to win, you have objectives to cap, you have enemies to kill, and you have teammates to protect. And these are objectives that you must carry out, and that also means that you have to learn how to set aside the personal differences. Temporarily, not permanently. You might not be best buddies outside of the game or inside of the game, and it's alright, it's okay to disagree on stuff, it's okay to butt heads. It's something that will be necessary sometimes, to develop. But one of the best ways you can gel as a team is by splitting up the roles, tank, DPS, and support. You look at the players in there. So you make role partners, basically. So if you're a pit scan DPS, your partner would be a projectile DPS. If you're a main tank, your partner is a flex tank. If you're a main support, your partner is a flex support. And you can already maybe see that if you partner up, within these smaller groups, you can then connect these chains or links to form a chain. And if you look at a chain, the typical saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. But you shouldn't look at only the performance, in game, how skilled someone is. You want to look at how well you communicate, how well you understand, how well you talk with each other, how you look at someone else, and so on. And you can work on that as a team, but it's easier if you start in steps, basically. Anyways, the way you look at the team, and as I mentioned, it might we have a situation in our imaginary situation where it's not natural. It will affect the behaviors we have against each other in the team. It will affect how we look at each other, and it will happen that we disagree on things. It's gonna be a lot of frustration, maybe at first. Frustration comes from expecting something and then it doesn't happen. Usually, that when it comes to misunderstandings. And in my opinion, that's minimal stuff that can blow up to bigger problems. And once it's too big to solve, it usually leads to a team being disbanded, a teammate getting kicked, or maybe players become aggressive against each other. And these frustrations, they are easy to solve once you know how to solve them. It's a bit difficult to understand it at first, but if you imagine that you're in game and you try to coordinate fights, but it's not working, let's say that we have a Hanzo that's coming late into the fight when there's a grab about to be used. He misses the dragon or the timing, and the grab is basically wasted, and you can't cap a point, or you can't defend a point, and you lose the match, or you lose the map, and everyone is feeling bummed, and the first person they look at is the Hanzo. Well, you can learn from that, both as Hanzo, both as the team. And for an example, you want to look first, is it because something was misunderstood, not because someone did something wrong? Or you want to define the problem first. And if you start by looking at what did each and every person do wrong, for example, you're already biased, and you're already looking from a perspective where you want to pin someone. But if you try to find, was it a misunderstanding? Was it because someone didn't cooperate? Was it because someone didn't know? You have to look at all angles that you can and are aware of. So, for example, did we use too few ults? Did we use too many ults? Was I too late to the fight? Was the target focus split? In this case, I was late to the fight. I can pretend to be the Hanzo. And it's a typical misunderstanding and nothing else. Like, usually teammates or players in a team, they don't want to work against each other. They don't want to throw. They don't want to ruin the experience. Maybe in ranked sometimes, but usually not in organized play. And the best way I would approach it from the perspective of Hanzo, I wouldn't try to hide my mistake, and I wouldn't try to apologize for it. And the reason for that is because if I do that, it's for my own sake, and it's not going to help me. It's only going to bite me in the future. And it's because even if I apologize, it's not going to bring a solution. If I hide it, it's not going to bring a solution. The best way to fix a problem is by embracing it. And for example, in this case, all I need to do is think about using a dragon earlier, or maybe ask my Zarya, hey, can you help me count down? And then the Zarya goes, okay, 3, 2, 1. And then, I maybe shoot the dragon on 2 or 1 or whatever. Doesn't matter. And if we take a more complex situation, let's say someone is a bad teammate and just argues with everyone all the time. They're like angry, and what do you do at that point? Well, it's pointless to avoid them. It's pointless to push them away. And it's pointless to not try and fix the problem. You solve the problem, as I said, by embracing it. And it's the first thing you learn when you learn about conflict resolution. The reason for that is because you have a goal as a team, and usually when you're a player in a team, you have a contract as well. You can't just pick up your stuff and leave. You're expected to be professional and, make things work. Obviously within reasoning, of course. But you can't just be mad at someone for not using a dragon ult, or be defensive, like they ruined your world. If, I wouldn't take it offensive if someone told me I should be quicker on using a dragon ult. It's not like I ruined my world, because I can't go back in time. There's no use for me to try and justify why I didn't use the dragon, because once it's done, you can't help it, and you must focus on the next step, next match, next map, next point, whatever it is. So in this case, if someone is super angry, you give them some space, you invite them back, and you don't try to make it bigger by putting the person in an awkward position where they might feel awkward, or where they might feel bad for expressing themselves. You want your teammates able to express anger. You want them to be able to express sadness, happiness, etc. Because otherwise you store everything inside, and who knows if someone might explode during a match. You might say a tiny thing wrong, and everything might blow up, and you might lose a map because someone is tilted. So you can try to avoid that by being proactive about it. You make an environment where people are accepted as they are, but not in a way where you comfort them all the time. You don't want to comfort people all the time. You want to help them get over things as well. So maybe it's not the right moment to, talk about things. If someone is super frustrated, just let them cool off then. Let them talk about it later. And the reason for this is because frustration, is one example only, usually from misunderstandings, it can be a blinding emotion. And that's because it can be like opening the floodgates, if that makes sense. You might release other stuff, other stress that's not related to that you maybe wouldn't want normally. And it's because we are in a state of mind where we're angry, and not everyone is angry in the same way. For example, there's people who raise their voice. There's people who speak too fast. There's people who don't speak at all when they're angry. And there's people who become violent, everyone is unique. And the thing you have to understand, when you face misunderstandings and you notice that someone's angry or yourself are angry, and if you don't know how to proceed about it, just make a list of how you yourself would be when you're angry, and you list the things that you express. Let's say that you're talking faster, you raise your voice, maybe you slam your desk or whatever, just imaginary right now. And then what's the best way of dealing with you at the moment, when you express that? It's only for yourself you're writing this, by the way. And then do the same for the person that the situation is about. And the reason you can do it this way is because it's easier if you do it from your own perspective when you're not angry about when you're angry, if that makes sense. Because there's all these small things within you that creates one big identity when you're angry. And the same goes for the other person. But when you look at your teammate when something happens, it's easy to look at it as one big problem. And when you don't know what to do, instead of taking blind shots in the dark and maybe make the situation worse, just give it some time and try to break down the problem, take things in steps, and it's way easier to solve it that way. Like, first you have to define what's wrong. Once you know what's wrong, what's the best way to solve it? When you know what's a good solution, you can find a way to reach the solution. So the way you solve it, you also take that in steps. And yeah, it's that simple to solve misunderstandings. It's hard at first because you need to become aware of what's happening and why it's happening. And a team culture adapts itself depending on how the individuals in the group improve or change, etc. So if you have a team where everyone is angry, well, the team culture will adapt itself towards an angry team, to make it acceptable to be angry and so on. But if you have a team culture where you solve problems, you let people be themselves, you don't have to pretend to be positive all the time or pretend that you're not tilted, etc., then it adapts itself to promote these things and so on. And yeah, that's it.